Um, I would offer this morning that I'm so pleased to be a part of GLF again. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I describe myself as a student of GLF and of all of the various ITWLA functions and activities and forums over the years. And so I'm going to do my best to take what we've been hearing so far in this GLF, both yesterday and also this morning as well. Dr. Messiah, as always, I want you to know I took a lot of notes as you were speaking. And I think we will begin to see a common thread to the things that Dr. Messiah and the foundation that he laid, and of course some of the speakers yesterday.
Mr. Marcio, I think your video went up. There you go.
Did it go out? Oh, I'm so sorry. But are you hearing me now? Are you seeing me now?
Yes, yes, we hear you and see you.
Good. Right, so I just got lost my place. I guess what I'm saying is I'm a student of GLF, and I'm going to attempt to build on the foundations that have already been laid. And my work is always to take the things that sessions and forums like GLF will deposit into you and apply it in the marketplace. One of the things that I learned very early in the GFL journey and the ITWLA functions is that we are responsible for what we hear, and we're responsible to put the things in action that we've been taught. And so I'm going to share, my presentation is not very long, but I'm going to share my journey this far through these times of change and the things that I held on to in order to lead, because leadership is what is required of all of us. Fundamentally, we will understand that, as I share my screen with you, fundamentally we will understand that the issue isn't changing times. Fundamentally, what we should understand is that change will happen. So, because change will happen, the thing that is fixed through this self-governance theme and my topic of self-governance around creative leadership during the times of change, the things that will change is not the issue. The issue is my leadership. And I hope that I'm able to share just a couple of things that I held on to ground me and also to lead while life changed around us in such a drastic way. So first of all, I don't know if this happened to you who are listening all around the world, but I found myself as a leader in the places that I'm called to lead, in my family, particularly in my business, in my community. I found myself asking this question: what just happened? And it led me to this place of trying to understand, will the real crisis please identify yourself? Because if we don't identify the real crisis or the change that is occurring, then you could make some very improper, incorrect decisions. And I came up with what I would call a list of positions or questions that, again, releases, I believe, creativity, or releases this component of leadership. And it's an inherent something that we have in all of us, but it needs to be activated. So the first thing is, to lead in changing times, you must have clarity about what changed. And believe me, I had no view of Dr. Messiah's presentation. I think it's just the king orchestrating a message that we need to make sure that those who are listening, and when you go away from this GLF session, that will allow you to get to the next season. So to lead in changing times, you must have clarity about what changed. Next, to lead in changing times, you must ensure that the change being forced upon you, and I underscore the word force because when we ask ourselves what just happened, um, in many cases, I hope in no case, we didn't orchestrate this pandemic. And again, I'm working myself back to what is my topic, and that is creative leadership in changing times. Uh, and for the creativity to be released, we must be clear that there are two types of change in this case. Change being forced upon us, and as an adoption from Jack Welch in the quote, um, the change being forced upon us or upon you, we must make sure that it's not greater than the change occurring within you or within your organization. Or as Welch said, if the change outside of your business is greater than the change inside your business, then you are out of business. Next, I want to be sure that you're clear that creative leadership in changing times will demand you identify the difference between the change that is being forced upon you versus the change being demanded of you. So the message here is that there is change that is being forced upon you. Simultaneously, especially in this particular, these changing times that we are experiencing, there is perhaps change being demanded of you. And this is difficult to put in perspective when both are happening at the same time. And so the change being forced upon you, there's a solution to it. That which is outside of your control, that you had no hand in causing it to come about. You were on the wall, you were doing all that you were supposed to do, and then the circumstances around you changed. What helped me and is helping me through this time of seasonal changes and pandemic changes, etc. What helped me and what is helping me is to default in responding through visionary responses. And so the key for this is you've got to have a clear vision for yourself, your organization, or whatever it is that you are, you may, wherever it is you may be, even in your home. So the response to change that's been forced upon you, in order to release the creativity and to be creative as you lead, the response must come from a place of vision. And then there's the change that is being demanded of you. And that change that is being demanded of you, or this stuff that's happening in this season that is causing discomfort in the way things were flowing, and it's lasting for a very long time. What we are, and what you are as an individual being called on to change, I am suggesting, and certainly this is what happened with me and what happened in our organization, that you unlock new value. And so it's innovative change. And when you pursue unlocking new value, your creativity will begin to flow in ways that you never thought possible. And let me just say here right now that this is not necessarily innovative change, that is. This is not necessarily coming up with something brand new. It may be simply taking that which you already do and moving it and pushing it to the level that is next, so to the things that you really knew somewhere in the back of your mind, or somewhere as you dream about where you're headed through visionary eyes, that boy, there's really something next that I ought to be doing. And that's called unlocking new value. So it's building on what you already have laid down, but getting to the next level. And so in this definition of innovative change, it's really talking about the unlocking of new value. And it could be very small things that have had and will have a huge impact in your life, on your organization, or in the places where you're called to lead. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. When there is change that is being forced upon you, and when there's change that is being demanded of you, only the wisdom of God can help you. This has grounded me, and this has caused me to be still in moments where I needed to be still. And I commend this to you. I'm not being tongue-in-cheek here when I say only the wisdom of God can help you. I am literally following the examples of our that are listed in our Constitution that tells us how to unleash the creative side of us. And sometimes it means being quiet and being still, but most importantly, calling on the wisdom of God to help you. And I found myself in this place many times. So, I'm going to forgive the slide, it's a bit blurred. So here are some bedrock principles. If we think about creativity and creative leadership through these changing times, here are some things that will ground you, some bedrock principles. Because, you know, while all of this stuff is going and we're hearing all the information, this is not new. We've seen this type of stuff in our history over time before. We can trace it back in history. To us, it feels new because really we've not experienced it before. And in many cases, as leaders, we're prepared. We have plan A, plan B, strategy this, strategy that, and tactic this, etc. But really, what could have prepared us for what we are feeling that is new, that we've never experienced before? Because it's a big deal. Everything and everyone is impacted by this pandemic. The pandemic is far-reaching. This season and this change, it's far-reaching. I found myself in thinking about what's going to happen on the other side of this pandemic. I found myself saying, boy, I'm blessed to be able to open my retail locations, if not all the time, or for the number of shifts that we were able to open before. We have reduced shifts, but I'm blessed to have that ability to open. But if I plan for the future, how do I plan? Because if this pandemic continues, it means that my customers won't be able to come and purchase even as they're doing now. So how do I plan if this pandemic continues? And here's the guiding principle. There is nothing new under the sun. That's bedrock. And as I came to grips with that, I began to appreciate that principle, that there's nothing new under the sun. So it led me to this principle. The creator didn't change, our situation did. So in all of my questions about what we were experiencing, it became clearer to me what I was dealing with, which then began to unleash the creativity and the thoughts of how to be creative and how to lead from the perspective of, okay, we really got to unlock incremental value. Because of this assurance, the creator didn't change, our situation did. So when I think about why is this happening now, what was wrong with the progress and the growth and the development being made in the world, in my country, in my business, in my neighborhood, in my home, and with me? What was wrong with that? That there's this huge interruption or change of season being forced upon me and being demanded of me. And then a quote during the pandemic I heard from Canon J. John. He says, God sometimes changes our situation, and sometimes he changes us. So I defer to the foundation, and I got this from GLF. Dr. Jerry Horner some years ago said at one of the GFL sessions, he said, only do what you can, do all that you can, and do it now. Only do what you can, do all that you can, and do it now. And so one of the practical applications of this advice, this foundational advice, building on what I've said before, as I find myself asking, what are the resources that I do have? How am I appropriating those resources? How am I applying what I'm learning, and what action am I taking? And what I found is, from this, the leadership that I have to take, or the leader that I have to be, I found small things that we are implementing and have implemented in our organization that is making, and that will continue to make, we believe, a huge difference in our operation. So some quick steps, and I promise you that wouldn't be long. I think my time is almost done. Some quick steps for creative leadership in changing times. Number one, and again, I did not copy Dr. Messiah, but number one, be clear about the problem you're solving. I'm amazed that God gives us in his word such basic bedrock principles if we would take the time to really see what he's saying to us. God solved a time of what I would call chaos and pandemic, in my view. And he framed it in these words: the earth was formless, it was empty, and it was dark. And if you read Genesis 1, it tells you that he was clear about what the real issue was. And that's why I believe the things that he did to create what we call the world, and what we quote from Genesis 1 came about. The second thing I want to commend to you is ask the right questions. There's nothing worse to creativity, especially as you are being called on to lead, when you're asking the wrong question, because you will draw wrong answers. For instance, I allowed myself the space to ask this question: has this pandemic, or this season, this changing times that we're going through, has this pandemic been allowed in order to help me? Now, I think while you're feeling the pain of the things that we're going through, to ask yourself that question, that is the beginning of creativity for me. Because if this pandemic has been allowed, and note my wording, I'm saying if it was being allowed by our Creator to help me, then I must be clear. What help is it that I need? How is it? Why is it being allowed to help me? And how so? The third thing I will ask you to consider carefully is to examine carefully the change. In other words, is COVID the problem, or has it exposed the problems? I will leave that one for you to consider. Is COVID the problem, or has it exposed the problems? Number four, commit to first doing the right thing, and then the good thing second. I found myself looking at cost-cutting measures, accounting measures, business acumen measures, versus, boy, how do I ensure that the reason that I am in business is being properly appropriated because of who it will impact, because of the other side of this changing season, etc. And then number five, solve the problems you were born to solve. The direction, strategic plans, and provision is hidden therein. That is, when you solve the problems you were born to solve. So as I wrap up, the considered changing season and the steps to unlock new value, to have a huge impact on the work that we do, on the business that we operate. First of all, the change that has been forced upon you, approach it or respond to it out of what I call visionary change. That is doing the right thing. For us, that was a refocusing on the training and development of our team members in our organization. For us, that was focused on inspiring the leadership in our leaders. And then we had to do the good thing, which was matching cost to revenue and to make sure that we could actually take advantage of our ability to continue in business. And then innovative change. What we did was we determined that we would make sure that we set up our team members to succeed by giving them the right structure in our retailing operations to succeed. Because what we were leaning toward and doing more of was that cost-cutting accounting stuff at the expense of our team members. And so we had a session and we brought that back into focus. And it's amazing how our team members are beginning to run with the mandate given them in our operations. And the thing that brings such joy and fulfillment to my heart is one of our leaders in our organizations had an idea because we were unlocking new value, we were being creative. And this idea was our team members were struggling in many cases, some of them, for home schooling and education. And this is not a brand new idea. I'm sure there are others doing it, but for us, it was a big deal. They were struggling in many cases to manage taking care of their children, making sure they were being educated and being able to come to work. And one of our brilliant leaders in terms of creativity came up with the idea, well, why don't we facilitate by setting up and paying for a space and hire some teachers and provide the tools like tablets and internet for the children of those our team members to come and spend the time to be properly educated. So these were some of the things that we did. And in so doing, it allowed us to, and it allows us to be creative in our leadership. I see my time is all but done. I want to share with you the basis of a lot of what I've shared with you. And frankly, leadership, as I said, whether it's changing time, whether you want to be a resilient leader, whether it's authentic leadership, no matter how you describe the leadership that's appropriate for the season that you're in. Ultimately, your leadership, you were born a leader, as we've learned, but you must become that leader that you were born. And there's a basis by which when you get squeezed, either externally or drawn on internally, that you must have in order to lead. And Daniel chapter 9 is a fascinating discourse about a leader who knew what to do. And I won't read it all for you, but I pulled out verses 18 to 19. Give ear, our God, and hear. Open your eyes and see the desolation of the city that bears your name. We do not make requests of you because we are righteous, but because of your great mercy. Lord, and he stood on what he knew of God, and he said, listen, forgive, hear, and act. And Daniel took this position because he was reminding God, for your sake, my God, do not delay, because your city and your people bear your name. Gabriel came with an answer in verses 22 to 23. Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, a word went out, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. And here's where I built my whole presentation. Therefore, consider the word and understand the vision. I will end there, Mr. Chair, because I think my time is gone. And may your creativity be released and unleashed in these times of change. Thank you.
Okay, awesome, Mr. Moss. Awesome, Mr. Moss. If you could start your video, I just wanted, there you go. So yes, I think the points that you shared and everything that you were saying, it resonates. And actually it echoes what we were discussing yesterday, right? And I think when it comes to creative leadership in changing times. It calls for innovation. And in one of the sessions yesterday, I think it was Yemi's session, he said that innovation is born out of need, but created with resourcefulness, right? So you understand that there's a need to make a change and to be creative and to be innovative, and you simply use what you have. And the fact that you delegate some of your authority to your staff members, and you empower them to think of ways that they can thrive in their positions and the business can thrive, which I think it shows your resilience in leadership. I think that's entirely what this whole seminar is about. And I just want to thank you for always accepting the invitation and the call to share some of your wisdom and your expertise, and because I always learn so much from your experiences, especially when dealing with your immediate staff.
Well, I thank you, and I trust that what was shared will be useful and helpful to all those who are listening. This stuff is real, but God is bigger, and He's more real.
Absolutely.
And again, I simply say I'm a student, so I'm just trying to apply those things that through your leadership and over the years, the stuff that has been afforded to us and shared with us and taught and that we've learned, just to apply it, because I'm just a testimony that those principles work. Those bedrock principles work.
Yeah. You said something in your presentation, and I wanted you to clarify. One of your points was to do what is right, then do what is good. And I know my dad used to say this all the time, and even Dr. Demerit used to always say, "When in doubt, do what is right." But sometimes people confuse, doing what is right to doing what is good. Care to expound on that distinction?
Well, certainly in business, there's this tendency, and it happened to me as well. There's this tendency to always shoot for the bottom line. The problem is, if you always shoot for the bottom line, but you don't care how you get to the bottom line, then you're setting up yourself to not have a bottom line. And so for us, in the work that we do, we're in retail, and we know that those team members that come into our organization are perhaps in transit to something else that is a career that is not working in our retail format. And what we are careful to always do is to prepare them for the career that they're headed toward. So our responsibility is to build their business acumen and to build their leadership responsibility and to help them to understand the ownership mentality. That's our vision output. And to get there, sometimes you have to balance making a profit with focusing on the things needed to be done in order to make sure that that vision output is what you really are working on. So when this change of season, we call it this pandemic season, came upon us, my accounting training and instinct kicked in right away. Oh man, we have to manage shifts. We have to make sure that we are matching expenses with revenue, and that the shareholders will be happy that, okay, for goodness, we didn't lose our shirt because we had this pressure because of the change on the outside of us. Well, very quickly, my visionary response was, okay, what's the right thing to do? Because I could be very short-sighted and do a good thing, balance those expenses to that revenue, and miss the people in the process. And what happens is, when it's time for the people the team members, I call it, as we refer to, when it's time for them to release their creativity, because I can't do it myself, they're thinking about whether or not they're going to be on shift. And some of that happened. But what we tried to do was to make sure that we focus on the vision. And that was the right thing to do.
Right.
And it's amazing when you do that, you focus on the right thing, the good things, you are able to do the good things.
Absolutely. I was about to say, it takes care of itself from that point.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Mr. Moss. Again, I appreciate you always being a part of all of our events. Like I say, your wisdom is unmatched, and I lean on that wisdom quite a lot. So thank you, sir. I'm sure our viewers enjoyed your talk as well, and I just want to extend my gratitude and our gratitude to you for being a part of the event.
ITWLA and GLF is family. I'm pleased to be able to share.
Awesome. All right, thanks.